Lishana Tova. As we usher in this new year, I have a confession to make. I have a terrible sense of direction. Just has never been my strong suit. When someone tries to explain to me how to get someplace, I may nod, pretending to follow along, but it just doesn't compute. Thank goodness for the invention of the GPS. I punch in the address and off I go. No fuss, no muss. But as I am driving along, following the directions of my automated companion, I still occasionally have trouble and miss a turn. And then appears my least favorite word, a declaration of my navigational failure: recalculating. Whenever I go off track, whenever I stray from the supreme wisdom of the GPS, the word appears again, mocking me: recalculating. Oh, how I loathe that word. But on the other hand, it's not all bad news. For as frustrating as it can be to make a wrong turn, there is comfort in knowing the GPS will get me back on the right track. With its guidance, I am never lost. Much in the same way, the high holy days come to serve as our spiritual GPS. They ask us to make a recalculation, to consider the direction we are headed and whether or not it will lead us to our desired destination. The words of our tradition, our rituals, our faith, are a navigational beacon, helping bring us back to the right path, no matter how far we have strayed. This is the essence of teshuvah, repentance, which comes from the Hebrew word to return. Due to our transgressions, we have strayed from the path of righteous living. But during this sacred time, if we make a sincere effort to atone for our misdeeds, we can return. The hope for a return is perhaps best expressed in our liturgy. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva, chadesh yameinu kekedem. Let us return, Adonai, to you, and we shall return. Renew our days as of old. This powerful plea is first uttered at a moment of communal calamity. It is taken from the book of Lamentations, which describes the state of the Jewish people after the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. Due to the transgressions of our ancestors, the Babylonians razed the holy city and send the people into exile. The surviving Jewish community is left in shambles in the wake of this catastrophe. Distraught, frightened, and bereft, they cry out to God. Hashivenu Adonai elecha b'nashuva, chadesh yameinu kekedem. The people are calling out to God for forgiveness, but even more, a return to a feeling of divine connectedness. It is as if they are saying, God, we are scared, terrified, alone. Please do not cast us aside. Let it be like it was before, when we felt your presence. Renew our days as of old. Hashivenu Adonai, let us return. In any year, this is a poignant prayer, but how much the more so in the time of COVID-19? Since this pandemic began, we have all been asking, when will we be able to return? To return to our old routines, to our workplaces, to our schools, to our favorite restaurants. How we yearn for the days of old, before we had to use such phrases as social distancing, shelter in place, and contactless delivery. Before we were worried about droplets and aerosols, the effectiveness of different kinds of masks, and counting the seconds we wash our hands. Before each day included news of infection outbreaks and an ever-increasing, unfathomable number of victims. We are tired, exhausted. Exhausted by the seemingly unending, monotonous slog we are forced to endure, like we are living the world's worst remake of Bill Murray's classic Groundhog's Day. The feeling of overwhelming sameness, the inability to go about our lives as we would before the start of this outbreak. We are tired of the conflicting reports, of closures, of canceled plans, and perhaps most of all, the politicization of how best to confront this virus. All of this leaves us emotionally, physically, and spiritually drained. We are lonely. As we struggle through this pandemic, we feel so keenly the loss of being able to gather together as a synagogue community. Our hearts are torn at not being able to be together during this sacred time. The feeling of sitting in our beautiful sanctuary, gazing up at our majestic ark and the Torah scrolls contained within, learning together in the makom, coming together to participate in the mitzvah of tikkun olam. Most of all, we miss being with our temple family, the smiling faces, the hugs, sharing our stories, fond remembrances, making each other laugh. We long for a time when we can hang out in the lobby or the APR and just shoot the breeze with our friends, unmasked and unburdened. When, after services, we can dig into some delicious desserts, perhaps at a WTBI pie oneg, one of my personal favorites. When we can play poker or mahjong with our friends, we miss our TBI family. And we are scared. We are scared for our own well-being, for the health and safety of our families. We are concerned for our kids, disconnected from their peers, their camps, their sense of normalcy. We worry about our parents and grandparents who cannot visit, who we see only on Zoom, Skype, and FaceTime. We are anxious about our loved ones who are in assisted living facilities and are cut off from the outside world. We are frightened because we don't know what comes next, when this will all be a memory. We have had enough. We have had enough of the uncertainty, the unknown, the fear, the loneliness. Like our ancestors, we cry out to God, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem, renew our days as of old. During this pandemic, it is easy for us to become dispirited, to be downcast. There is so much that we have endured, and from the looks of things, we are not finished with dealing with the coronavirus. It is going to be a long time before things return to normal, if they ever go back to normal. So even as we pray for restoration, for renewal, for things to go back to the way they used to be, we know it's not likely happening anytime soon. So is our prayer for return in vain? Are our redemptive pleas destined to go unanswered? There is another way for us to look at these ancient words. Rabbinic tradition takes our verse from Lamentations, Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Let us return, Adonai, to you, and we shall return, renew our days as of old, and reinterprets it, claiming it was not, in fact, first uttered after the destruction of the temple, not after the fall of Jerusalem. Instead, the rabbis ascribed this plea to the first human beings who ever existed, Adam and Eve. They maintain that it is they who had the most reason to beg for return, to beg for renewal, after their mistake led to their own exile from the Garden of Eden. Who else would long for a do-over more than Adam and Eve, who lost paradise after their destructive indiscretion? But as Rabbi Robert Scheinberg opines, this plea is not asking for a return to Eden. Adam and Eve know this is not on the table. Utopia will always be a memory. But that time has passed. They must confront a new reality. They must learn to adjust to a new normal. So what does their cry of Hashivenu refer to in this context? As Rabbi Scheinberg writes, it is a plea for resilience, a plea for the ability to renew ourselves after future crises and dislocations, just as our lives have been renewed before. As Elie Wiesel said, God gave Adam a secret, and that secret was not how to begin, but how to begin again. My friends, God may not restore our lives to the way they were before the advent of coronavirus. That may be too much to ask. But we can pray for God to give us strength to persevere, to bestow upon us a sense of resiliency in the face of adversity. It isn't about the restoration of a magical time when everything was perfect, but the ability to face our challenges with a renewed spirit. It is not about changing our circumstances, but changing ourselves. The Jewish people have learned the lesson of perseverance from the beginning of our people's existence. From the time Abraham and Sarah left everything they knew to wander towards an unknown promised land, our people have known what it means to struggle in the hope of a brighter future. From wanderings and exiles, from facing down oppression and discrimination, to surviving attempted annihilation, we have persevered. Through our resiliency, we have built the Jewish homeland and rose to heights of which our ancestors could only dream. We are no strangers to doing what is hard in order to ensure a brighter tomorrow. And now we face a different kind of challenge, one that requires us to make sacrifices, one that asks us to sublimate our own needs for the greater good, for the communal weal. And it isn't easy. For many, options are limited and impossible choices have to be made. In the face of such hardships, we may be tempted to throw in the towel, to surrender to despair. In these dark moments, we turn to God and ask for strength, for courage, for the patience we need to persevere. And my friends, I'll tell you this, I see our perseverance every day. I see our struggles and our strivings in the face of this pandemic. I witness it every time I hear that someone has discovered a new hobby, be it gardening, crafting, home organizing, or baking. I have never seen so many creative ways to make challah. We have explored new food delivery services and supported local businesses. Defying the humidity, some of us are taking long nature walks or biking to get some fresh air, while others are getting the most out of their Netflix, Hulu, and Disney Plus accounts. Some of us have found solace in social media, posting pictures of quarantine life, sharing funny memes, or playing virtual games. We have created workspaces within our homes for ourselves and for our children. Becoming Zoom experts, we have found innovative ways to catch up with family and friends. None of this comes naturally, but we are learning. Trying our best to cope, each in our own way, we are moving forward. And as a synagogue, though we have not been able to physically gather, we have done our best to maintain our sense of community. I am so proud of how we have responded to this unprecedented challenge, how quickly we were able to transform our synagogue into an online congregation. It has not been without its hurdles, without a learning curve, but we have accomplished so much in a relatively short amount of time. Creating engaging online worship services, celebrating not only Shabbat, but Passover and Shavuot as well. We have hosted fantastic Jewish musicians like Joe Buchanan and Nefesh Mountain, as well as guest speakers, whether lecturing on Hegelian philosophy or the secret Jewish roots of chocolate. We have provided learning and social opportunities for our youth as well, with Danny and Bridget leading the way. We have welcomed the new cantor and been inspired by her music, her wisdom, and her creativity. And our lay leadership, with a bit of help from Angela, Pete, and Carl, organized 2 spectacular fundraising events, a drive-through Tampa Bay Jewish Food Festival, and TBI's Got Talent. And let's not forget, a little online bingo. Above all, we have worked tirelessly to remain connected to each other, even as we remain physically distant. We have striven to call up every member of our community, to check in with them, to get a handle on our synagogue needs. The challenge of COVID remains, but our congregation continues to be a strong and vibrant presence for our members and our community. Our successes as a congregation over the past few months should inspire and encourage us as we continue to move forward as an online congregation until this pandemic abates. We all recognize and affirm the loss of not being able to come together. We all recognize the hurt we are experiencing, but we are still here. We are resilient. My friends, the idea of returning, the hope of renewal is so important to us right now. We need to believe that there will come a day when the coronavirus will plague us no more. But until that day, we must persevere. As frustrating, as unsettling as our current reality is right now, let us take heart. God has planted within us the ability to surmount any obstacle. In those moments when we have our doubts of our capability to cope, let us speak our ancient words. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva, Chadesh Yameinu kekedem. God, renew our spirits, and we will be uplifted. Strengthen our souls to face this moment, and if we falter, imbue us with fortitude. Be with us through this struggle, and help us find peace. My friends, let us take solace and spiritual nourishment from these words of prayer, as together we continue to persevere. As we await the day when we can once again gather together, let us continue to connect with each other safely, hastening the time when we can meet in person. In the face of this pandemic, let us recall the words of blessing Moses spoke to Joshua, Chazak ve'amatz, be strong and resilient. L'shana tova.